Great thing. Okay. You want to talk a little bit about I guess the way we got here, I guess? Or I don't know.
Oh
You're,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you're streaming, right? So I don't know if you want to show a
I'm
little
just
bit.
gonna be recording and then I'm gonna upload it. So I'm not streaming right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, I actually um some people or two people that watch my videos um named Ming and Sethi. They actually told me that I should get it he's actually in your chat right now, him
Yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
yeah. I saw him earlier, yeah.
They actually got me this account progressions with you, so
hmm
I'm excited to learn.
Okay, so you've been, from what I heard, you've been trying to do kind of like content-y stuff on Hyperion?
Yes, yes, I'm starting like fresh on Hyperion.
Nice. And you're doing just basically just YouTube, like lightly edited, like your overview of what you did during the week kind of thing?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay. So how long have you been doing that?
I actually started last week on Hyperion, so it's brand new.
Super fresh. Okay. And you've played the game before, like a while ago, or?
Yeah, 3 years ago I played. I got my Legion up to 7.6K, and
Mhm.
then kind of just took a break for a long time.
I see. And you were playing on Reboot back then, or non-Reboot?
Yes, I was
Yeah.
playing on Kronos.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So you kind of know the deal in terms of the general struggles, but the game has of course changed a lot in 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. And like I never got to like end game or anything like that, so I
Mm-hmm.
was mostly just leveling.
Gotcha. Okay. And you picked the best class. You picked the Demon Avenger.
Demon Avenger, yeah,
So
I've
what could
heard
go wrong?
heard pros and cons.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Many classes of pros and cons. Definitely Demon Avenger. Yeah. Yeah. I started about like 8 years ago now, I think, when I wanted to see if I could do content stuff, and I started with the Demon Avenger then. So full circle kind of thing.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Demon Avenger was. It just came off of like a really bad nerf. Just a small anecdote, but like in the past, when you got like cooldown reduction on the hat, there wouldn't be a reduction in efficiency even if you went like below 10 seconds. So theoretically, you could
Oh.
reset the cooldown all the way down to like 1 second on the shields. So you just hold down the button and you just send like a million shields at the map. There's still some videos out there with people who had it. But shields have changed a lot over the years. They probably had like a dozen changes. Like way back then, for example, if there was ever no target for just like a second, all the shields would instantly disappear. So you'd have to resummon all of them.
Okay.
And then there was a time where they would fly around, and then for a while they were kind of weak, but they flew around for a long time, and then they made them a bit stronger, but then made them not fly around for as long, or the heat-seeking range, basically the target-seeking range,
Yeah.
got reduced a little bit. So they've been tweaking them back and forth because it is a very powerful tool as a Demon Avenger. I think honestly it's probably one of the best skills in the game in terms of bossing, mobbing, giving you lifesteal, clearing, like picking up stragglers that are outside in the map that you can't reach. I think it's a really, really strong skill, but it's hard to say like, that's like our top skill because it's a little bit depressing with. It's nice,
Yeah.
but it's not like a super high impact. Like this is a game changing skill. So
So it's the skill that pretty much got changed the most on Demon Avenger.
probably. And our fifth job, when fifth job first came out, everyone was like waiting. And when is the actual fifth job coming out? Because even now the synergy is a bit weird. Like we get our damage from HP, but then you do more damage the lower your HP is, and then you also sometimes you need to press skills to not die, but they cost so much HP that when you're already about to die, you can't press them because you don't have the HP to use them. So then you still die, and it's like there's still some some
Yeah.
moments where you're like
Yeah.
this could be tightened up just a little bit. But it's basically when the Destiny update came out, so that's like a year. Was it the last summer? So like a year and a half ago. Then they basically redid all of the explorers, their flagship classes that were kind of outdated, and switched a lot for them. And actually, Demon Avenger probably got bigger buffs and more changes than any of the explorers did. And we finally, I think, became like a 5th job class that was playable. And that's around that time that I had my arc that I played, kind of because I got, annoyed with how much the DA didn't really get a 5th job, and it was just like I was pouring time into it, but I just wasn't seeing the returns on that. And then the arc got to 280 and leveling past 280. We're talking a year and a half ago. I was like, this is just gonna take forever. So then I went back to the DA, and then basically the DA kind of like caught up to the arc in terms of levels. But even if you keep actively playing, even if you don't level, you can still make progress because there's a lot of time gating stuff, right? There's like backups and dailies and weeklies and all of that. So
yeah,
you can have characters that are 20 levels lower than you that are just out damaging the hell out of you. And you can have characters that are like 15 levels higher than you that just don't hit at all because they've just been grinding, especially now with Hyper Burn, right? You can get those levels really quickly. And then what does a level mean? That becomes trickier to really quantify. Like, this level means you can do exactly this, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're just coming back into it. So what's been your experience, I guess, for the last week? How many videos have you even uploaded? Did you do like one a day, or do you do like one every 2-3 days?
I've kind of just like did it to where, like it's not like a huge update between videos. It's pretty much like I did my hyper burning progression, and then I started leveling some Legion mules or Link mules through the new age, like the 0 to 100.
Oh,
I did a video over that, and then
that was a great event for that.
Yeah, exactly. So then now I'm my recent video was the strawberry event. I'm getting my Mercedes to 200.
But that's a good follow-up event for you to just keep it going, right? That's a lot of EXP. You don't need to fund your characters very much. You can just grind it out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I think I started honestly at a really good time.
Yeah, the summer and the winter events, that's when like everything goes down. Typically, the summer events are the best, but that's the summer events in Korea, so we get them 6 months later, so we get them in the winter. So our winter events are typically like among the best events that there are in terms of, speed and progress. If you're talking about more like morally like best, is it really good to push someone through the game super fast from a game dev point of view? It's very good because then people get access to more content, so they feel like there's more to do, so they also feel like they should be doing more, right? But like morally, a lot of people get pushed through the game very quickly in the beginning. That high increase like dopamine all over the time, right? Number go up everywhere.
Yeah.
And that can also be a little bit like, well, then suddenly they hit like a wall and like, where the hell do I go? I don't know if you hit that wall, but like for a lot of the sessions I do, there's like several places in the game where you can kind of hit a wall where it's like, I have to kind of have a plan from here on out. Otherwise, it feels like I could be losing a lot of man hours just kind of trying to figure things out or be inefficient about stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I don't really have knowledge past level 220, like honestly. So anything right here is like fresh to me, so I really don't know what I'm doing to like progress towards like, higher in the game. So
I gotcha. Are there any so usually before I start, like I ask a little bit about like how much you're familiar with my content, but I'm guessing not so much just yet. Maybe see my name somewhere, but
no. 3 years ago, I used to watch to learn. I used to watch you to learn. Then I took a break, and then I'm back. So really, I mean, I don't have much memory of that.
Yeah. Some things probably you can pick back up, and other things are just completely gone. Like you just don't have any memory really of how a certain system exactly worked.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it didn't exist back then, or the place within the game was probably different. So even if you do remember something, it might not even be helpful. It might even be detrimental almost to remember things from that long ago. Basically every year to year and a half, you really need to kind of like update your knowledge base, honestly. Because otherwise you might make decisions that were really good decisions 2 years ago, but then for now it's like, no, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So did you have some overarching like meta questions, or did you have some specific like targeted system questions, or
really, I mean, honestly, I've just been having fun. So like I guess my main questions is like like what bosses to do,
Hmm.
just to like progress. Because right now, I think the highest boss I could solo that I've tried is, I guess, normal Cygnus. Like I haven't done anything above that level. So
Hmm. Normal Cygnus. Okay. Normal Cygnus is one where the value of the crystal suddenly starts going up, right? Compared to like the
yeah,
dailies you can do, and you're like, oh wow, this is you get like a taste of how good the crystal life can be.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And then yeah, that's also one of the bosses that you get surprisingly quickly too after you do it on your first character to like other characters, and then you can do it on like 2 characters, 3 characters, 4 characters, and suddenly that money that you start bringing in from the just the bosses and from just the crystals start going up a lot. Okay, so to normal, yeah. So you're around that level. You're around like the 220 mark.
Yeah. I'm level 230.
230. Okay. Level 230. And how are you feeling about Demon Avenger?
I'm loving it, honestly. Like I haven't got bored at all with the class. My favorite class to play is Thunderbreaker. So I think honestly, like in similarity, this is like another one for me that's, fast and then a lot of melee skills. Um
Mm-hmm.
it's
Way less
yeah, it's
complex though, right?
yeah, way less complex, yeah, because
Yeah.
I like the simpler classes, so it's
Mm-hmm.
perfect for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I like to alternate. So I have some characters that are a bit more complicated, but in general, I prefer the ones that are a little bit, below like 4 out of 10 max, like in complication. And if some of are like 6 or 7, that's okay. But then, when it comes to bossing or it comes to making progress, I like to keep it alternated, so I'm not like super intense all the time because I'm on the older side. I don't have the hands. I've never was much of a hardcore gamer, so I know a lot of people do. If they have slightly more complicated characters, they like playing with controllers, so that you have more ergonomic shape, than a keyboard, and it helps
Yeah.
with like carpal tunnel and with your joints and everything. I never really gotten into that, but that is something to consider if you're more of a grinder. You're doing those long sessions, but I don't know how you prefer to play the game because I'm assuming you still have like a day job, right? That you're
Yeah,
working,
yeah,
so you
yeah. I
can't
work
just
full
play
time.
like 12 hours a day. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, gotcha. Okay, so one of the major things, like, cause yeah, so my channel is like almost 8 years old now this year. What happened a lot in the beginning is I was just trying to figure out the game myself as well. I wouldn't really look up things well, I would look some things up, but I wouldn't really like watch content and watch guides and stuff. The way I like it is just figuring it out myself. So usually the way that I teach and help people is mostly like, um, explaining like the foundations of how a system works, and then as long as you do the work and figuring out like what does my class do in terms of just like reading the skills, looking at the percentages, right, kind of like trying things out and seeing what your hitboxes are, all of that. As long as you can then match those two together, you can make any class work as long as you do that second part. So I usually don't do like, I'm gonna make like a Demon Avenger guide, but I'll make a Hyperstat guide and I'll make an Inner Ability guide, and there'll be of course specific points on like if you're a Demon Avenger, you might have to look at HP percent where other characters don't look at it, right? For Hyperstats, for example, or if you're doing Inner Ability, there's like a general advice on this is how you can effectively and efficiently use your Honor EXP since it is a limited value. And on the other hand, there will be a point where it's like, oh, and these are the lines that are specifically good for these classes, for example. Another thing that helps really well with that second part is the class discords. Some discords are, from what I heard, a little bit more elitist than others, but I have to get that through hearsay because I've been banned from a bunch of them for no obvious reason. But they have a lot of people in them who play the classes a lot, and they know the class in and out. And they usually have like FAQs with like just basic questions about a class, but also they'll have a lot of people who just have a lot of experience and have tried a lot of stuff already with certain classes. So they're usually a good like treasure trove of information as well. So what I try to do with my channel is I try to find those pieces of information, and if they don't exist yet, I try to make them, and then connect them to the bots in my channel so that people can just call them up, basically get a link and then see it there. In the past, it was a lot of just like walls of text in my chat, but you can imagine after a while that becomes a little bit spammy and not really manageable. So a lot of that is just like the bots that are programmed with a reply message whenever you they put a question in, essentially. So that's what we usually use for these sessions, as well as like the foundation for where to start. And then whatever topic comes up, as much as you feel like you want to get in depth on it, or you feel like you need more information to figure it out, then we can go into it.
Okay.
Well, so your initial question, I think a reasonable question, is like, what is the next boss, or what is the content and everything that I can do? The two things I'm like the most proud of that I think get to the heart of most people's questions the best. The two commands that I have is the progression command and the dailies command. And they are interconnected because both of them use level as a indicator. But like I said in the beginning, you know, that it can be a little bit difficult, right? One level 250 is not the other one. But if you get more familiar with the game and with, you know, how to upgrade and how strong you need to be and everything, then of course you don't need my information here as much anymore. Like, you already kind of know, and or you could just go in and practice and kind of see for yourself. So it's mostly for people who are just kind of lost and they just want general direction, because that's what I prefer myself. So that's what I like to give, is like general direction. Like, you want to roughly go for like these goals, and as long as you're like in that ballpark, you're good, you know. And then you could just enjoy yourself and do whatever you want with the game in that time. Like, you want to do a lot of quests, then go do all of the quests, you know, like, or you want to do monster collection, then do that. I'm never going to tell anyone they need to do something. I'm usually more about like, here are the options, and here is the resources that you can look up if you're looking for the details, and then the ultimate decision. As long as it's an informed decision, you can decide whatever you want, you know. Yeah. So these are like trying to map out. These are trying to map out the most, but you know, I could basically add like 30 more here because there are so many things, you know, in the map that you could use as a milestone or use as a gauge to see like how far are you in the game. But these are generally the most important ones that, as long as you can kind of ballpark those numbers, you'll be fine to do the content around your level. And then the content around your level is then mapped here with the blue marked areas in terms of the content that comes up as you level. And so some of it is just like level restricted, you can't really do it earlier, and some stuff will have level differences and then you lose a lot of damage, or there'll be a little daily or weekly time gated, and if you go there as soon as you hit the level, you just won't be able to do it. It's not realistic. So it would be, yeah, you don't want to like push yourself to do something that just doesn't really make sense to be able to do. And so these are like the general two that I think are a good like skeleton to like build everything else upon. And most of these specific metrics will all have their own command as well. Like, you can see the little note boxes here, right? So there's always a bunch of explanation here. Sometimes in here, if there's just exceptions or certain levels of items that need to be specified. So there's a lot of information in there. And then these I am currently working on this a little bit as well to update this, because I've noticed that, especially for new players, it can be very weird that you'd have like content that unlocks at level 100 or something, but then the boss is level 140, but then the drops for the boss are like level 80, and it's like, if you're coming from a different game where those things are more synchronized, it sometimes not make any sense. Because I know a lot of people just less now, because they changed how like carries work, where you have to do a minimum amount of damage, right? But a lot of the stuff was like, people would come into the game and they'd be like level 200, 205, 210, and then be like, I can't kill CRA, you know, like, I don't know how this works, but it's level 180 boss, and I can unlock it at like level 150, and the gear is also level 150, so I must be fucking up. Like, I must be just inept, so please carry me and get me through the game, because I'm apparently horrible at this game. But so I'm trying to kind of like map out as well, like the general order, and kind of, so I'm putting in the level here of like, what is the entry level, what is the content level, because this is very important to know in terms of the damage difference between you and the content, right? And then, do you need arcane power or sacred power to kind of have a goal of what to aim for? This is of course already subsumed in this, right, in the progression grid. Yeah. Progression grid is not just this is what you need, or this is what would be the best, because if you get more, it's technically always better, right? But it goes more into like efficiency for your time, like where to spend your time, where to spend your resources to get higher efficiency back in terms of overall progress for your character and damage for your character, essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, just like the crude example, you started with Cygnus, right? Or you were doing normal Cygnus, so you can just
Yes, I think that's like the hardest boss I've done.
Yeah, Cygnus is a lot better now. It was for the longest time. It had a 30-second cooldown for using potions. So if you have a run that's, longer than like 20 seconds, it would get really, really annoying really quickly. Because you'd have the little guys just chipping away at your HP, and then you have the big beams, and they would just always get you, basically. Or you get stuck up in the tornadoes, right?
Yeah.
As you get stronger, that's the great thing about the early bosses, is that from 1 week to the next, you can go from like barely being able to kill something to being able to kill something in like 20 seconds. Because you make such huge progress early on. And that is one of the benefits of like doing things more solo, is that you can see that progress. You can feel that way more than if you're doing things in party. But of course, you're gonna get to a certain point, and typically that breaking point is like when you're switching. You're trying to go from like a normal Lucid into like the harder bosses, like Hard Lotus, Hard Lucid, Hard Will. Like around this point is where you really start feeling that if you're trying to solo, it slows down quite a bit.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's something that you specifically are trying to not do. I don't know if you have like a theme for your playthrough or for your series.
Like my main goal right now on my Demon Avenger is to get to Hard Damien for the shield, because I think that's like the best in the slot, right?
Yeah. It can also drop from normal, but it's a way lower drop rate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's like been my focus on like getting to that level, and then after that, I'll pick a new goal. But that's like been my straight path.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, the shield is I usually call it the suicide shield. Because you do 10% more final damage, but you take 25% more damage from all sources of damage, including the percentage ones. So that puts you in situations where you need to use your blast basically as a heal buffer plus a reduced incoming damage. Otherwise, you just get one shot by stuff. So the blast becomes a very powerful survivability tool, especially once you're wearing the shield, because everything that hits you just hits you so much harder. All of that damage reduction from being in frenzy is the 30% is basically nullified by the shield. So you only need the extra 5%, but your HP is going down because of frenzy. So it becomes really much like a positioning battle with Demon Avenger, just being in the right spot, positioning, timing, and just timing for you, but also timing for the boss, like really learning to understand the patterns of the boss, like how long is the animation, what is exact hitbox of the bosses. Once you can do that well with the Demon Avenger, bossing becomes really fun, and you have really good constant damage. So the more you're soloing, the more you can have control over the boss fight, like where does the boss move, how much damage do I do, when do I burst, and all that. And you'll have probably slightly longer boss fights, of course, but you'll have more stable damage throughout the phases because of frenzy constantly hitting, because of the shields constantly hitting. And other classes that are more burst oriented in shorter amounts of time, they will usually benefit more from parties, because then during that burst they'll get a lot of buffs from the team, a lot of synergy, and then that's where they will get a lot of value. So inherently, if you go like super duper far in the game, more DPM heavy characters tend to fall off a little bit in terms of performance, and like at the peak, at like the Olympic level, because the game will be very much centered around optimizing that burst, and because a lot of the boss fights can be very tricky, and if you can get all the bursts together, you can do enough damage to maybe get out of a phase entirely without really having to deal with the mechanics as much. And especially in the beginning, when new content comes out and it's a bit more particular and it could be more tricky, when the requirements maybe aren't met, then the really heavy burst characters will have a benefit there. But as soon as the rest of the pack kind of catches up, then the DPM characters definitely have a spot in the meta or something. It's not like they're like horrible, but there's pros and cons, like you said before. So yeah, we can see that you're like Hardhilla. Have you tried her?
I have not. I have not tried it. Like, oh wait, actually, wait, no, I did beat Hard Hill. Yeah,
Okay,
I
nice. Yeah.
I did. I didn't know if that was like harder than normal Cygnus or not.
Well, again, this is not like an exact science. This is not like for every single class, this boss fight is always going to be harder than for every other class. You know, this one. They're just like,
Yeah.
you know, they're like roughly in the same neighborhood. There will be class differences. There will be account differences, right? Once you do this on like your 6th character, that's a hyper burn, you know, in the next event maybe, it's going to be a completely different experience than on your very first character. That's maybe like a Terra burn, right? So there's I try to not be too rigid with this. I try to tell people, like, you know, it's not like you're not allowed to do something here. If you want an extra challenge, you can. And it's not like you're not allowed, you know, yellow is not like, if you do that, you're dumb fuck or something, you know? It's like, if you want to do it, then you go ahead and do it. But this is just what I think is a general guide towards what I think is worth your time and what sets you up for, like, progress throughout the game, you know? If it's, like, some content you might feel like, well, what's the use here? Well, maybe it can give you backup or coins that can allow you to buy items, and then maybe 40 levels from now, suddenly those items become a good alternative because the only alternative to it are so rare and you don't get the drop that you can kind of hit the wall. But if you did the content before and you did it for a while, you might end up with currency so you have an alternative, so you can have an option to play the game. And once you have, you know, again, once it's like your 2nd or 3rd or 4th character, you might know like, oh, this one is worth it for me, this one is not worth it for me. And then you can just, you know, the whole game is like a smorgasbord where you can pick like, I want to do this, I don't want to do that, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And like for me, for example, I hate the weeklies for Absolab to unlock that, which is like the new set of gear that you're probably like slowly working towards. So I do basically everything I can to avoid that. So we'll have some characters that are maybe a little bit weaker than they could be, but I'm okay with that because I can compensate it with other things that I do like. Like I like the Legion, I like, you know, I got all my Link skills maxed out. So there's a lot of damage coming from that, and that compensates. So again, like to go back to the progression grid, like, yeah, I might be a little bit lower on, you know, a little bit lower on the attack or a little bit lower on the Star Force, for example. But I've got way more Legion, I've got maybe higher IED and higher boss damage, so, you know, it works out, you know? So as long as you find your path of, like, the path of least resistance kind of towards, but you can imagine that there's just some things that they're just so good and give you so much damage that you kind of have to do them, even if you don't like them as much, because it's just so valuable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can in general use this. We've got, like, 3-door CRA here. I don't know if you've unlocked Chaos Root Abyss.
I just finished the 5 days yesterday, so I was able to do the 5 days. Now it's unlocked for the reset today.
Nice. Yeah, these will be like the first like really good challenge, I think. A lot of different boss mechanics. They're very different from each other. Some of the bosses split. I don't know if you want me to spoil some of the boss fights. I don't know how much you want to.
No, I remember it from the past, but I never actually did it before, so.
I see. Okay. Yeah, you kind of saw them from afar, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're a good boss fight. The Queen will be very easy for you, right? For most people, as a Demon Avenger, Queen is hard because there's a lot of constant damage coming in with the burn. But the burn does like a flat amount, and Demon Avenger has an insane amount of HP, right? So it just barely tickles us, and we have constant life steal with the shields and with your attacks and with overload release, and so the Queen. So I started the game, right? Did like Queen. I was like, oh, that's such an easy boss. And then the very next character I tried to do the boss on, it just kept dying. I was like, what's going on? Like, what is even killing me? Like, I know it is a boss fight, right? It's super easy. And then you start realizing, like, oh, because of how this DA works, like I don't even register that as like a negative. And then that's what I think is a really cool part about playing multiple characters, is that you get to see the exact same game but from a completely different angle. And I feel like that adds a lot of value. Plus, I like being able to answer more questions from people. So if I have a little bit of experience from a different class and someone asks a question specifically from that class, like how do I do, I don't know, Von Bond with Wild Hunter, I can maybe see like, oh, there's like one or two things with a Wild Hunter that's a little bit tricky that I can imagine. So I don't know, I can be a little bit more precise in the feedback there.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Velum is like the hardest for everyone. Von Bond is typically the easiest, but he has a few one-shots, so that you have to be really careful for those attacks. Once you're good with those attacks, then you're fine. Clown can be extremely annoying, so that's more about strategy and about timing. and bursting at the right time. And yeah, Vellum is just like War of Attrition. Vellum is the first real boss that has like things that seem pretty innocuous, but then if you get hit by them, they can stun you, and then all the other stuff that's very dangerous then has free reign to hit you and start killing you. And that's when you see like the boss basically like setting up a combo to try to get you, which before that you barely have that. Like in Cygnus, yeah, you got like the tornado, and then you can get hit maybe by like one of those purple beams while you're in a tornado, but the timing between the attacks is typically so long, it's pretty hard for that to be like a true combo, you know? So it really starts with CRA and then with C-Vel that the bosses start getting more complicated. But every single boss that you fight will give you experience, and I've got that mentioned here as well, where I think like there are definitely some bosses that have experience that is very relevant for the next boss that comes up. Even if the boss fight looks completely different, you'll pick up some stuff like even already like subconsciously from the previous boss fights, and then that'll be one thing that you don't have to actively think about when you're fighting the boss, which means you can focus way more on the things that are more dangerous. And especially, you know, in a DA that you're looking at the patterns and you're looking for your positioning, that'll give you definitely a leg up on being able to focus on what you're doing, what the boss is doing, and where to move. But yeah, I would say always, like, especially if you like bossing, like just go in, just try, die a bunch of times, but learn from those deaths, you know? And as long as you learn from them, then none of your time is wasted. And, you know, you got buff freezers are free now. We had a while where, you know, if you die, all of your buffs were just gone and you had to pay, you had to go to the cash shop to get the freezer. It was a whole thing. So, you know, and you have practice mode pretty much unlimited now, right? And pretty soon we should be getting unlimited boss attempts as well. So yeah, you could just go in and just grind it, you know, and learn a lot in one day in terms of what can I survive, what can I not, what is scary about the boss, what is not scary at all, you know, what do I need to respect, what do I not need to respect, you know.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering. I didn't know if it was like if Demon Avenger is a very forgiving class or it's just a lot easier now than before.
So yeah, the early bosses, it's going to be super easy because early bosses mostly deal like flat damage, and you can just tank everything and it's just kind of a joke. But very quickly, all of the bosses will start doing percentage HP damage. So it's going to be pretty much the same for everyone unless you have percentage damage reduction on specifically mentioned items, on skills that deal percentage damage HP. So on a DA, if your goal is to stay in frenzy the whole time, right? Keep your HP relatively low because then you give yourself more final damage. So for you, it's going to be a matter of just dodging a lot, and if you can't dodge, then using blast to give you hopefully the heal plus the damage reduction so you can tank the stronger hits. And then setting up your burst when you're, you know, when you're ready. You're a 2-minute class, so most of your burst skills, right? They cycle off on a 2-minute timer, and you have your own bind as well. With the what is it, grip of agony or whatever the hell it's called, something edgy, right?
Yeah.
And then you know prep some of those buffs, and then you bind the boss, and then you burst them and try to get the most of your damage confirmed, like with your dimensional sword spinning around. Try to get all of those hits in with the second form. But a lot of it is going to be just like kind of a war of attrition of just positioning and jumping around the boss, gliding a lot. Do you glide?
I was gliding, but I think there's like a comment saying Flash was better, so I don't know which one was better for me.
Yeah, I personally started with glide. I only learned that I had flash jump around level 190, so we're talking like 8 years ago. So I was probably like 4 months into my character before I even knew I had a flash jump. So at that point, I already had the habit built. But for bossing, gliding is probably one of the best mobilities in the entire game, I would say. For mobbing, the flash jumping makes way more sense. Because the gliding can be a bit slow, but you have the ability to, you could just do a lot with glide. I mean, I can jump into the DA real quick and kind of mess around with it, but there's just so many options, and the further you go into the bosses and the game in general, the more you tend to go up as well and use the verticality more than just the horizontal, just moving back and forth, really just getting up in the air to dodge attacks, jumping over things, staying in the air for a while for scary patterns and stuff like that. And that really opens up, literally, and, you know, I guess figuratively, a new dimension of how you can fight the boss and how you can move around. So, like, you have your up jump, and you've got your flash jump with double tap, yeah. But like with glide, you can do like cool things like this. Like, it's It gives you a bunch of options to, just be way more adaptive to whatever the situation is and what's coming at you.
Yeah.
It gives you the opportunity to just glide into things and die to them as well. So it is not just a one size fits all, but it does for a lot of bossing. Other characters will get stuck, and then you have the ability to just be like, oh, there's something happening on the ground. Okay, well, wake me up when when it's over, and then I'll be on the ground. All right, there we go. And then you immediately just go back up, and then everyone is just like, they have like most classes have an up jump now, and they've got blink, right? So they can stay in the air for a little bit like this, and they can float around. But that's on a 25-second cooldown, something like that. 20-second cooldown. But we could just go, we could do a whole bunch of stuff with that. So just figuring that out and just playing around with that a little bit, and you'll find some boss fights where literally it does nothing for you, and it's just kind of like for show. But since we have Frenzy on, and you're fighting a boss and it's doing some stuff, if you just glide through it and you have Frenzy on, you're just constantly doing damage with the Frenzy at the same time, right? So even just when you're moving around, when you're ducking, when you're using your glide to try to get around, you're still doing damage the whole time. And that's kind of like the benefit that part of doing damage is also not dying and not having to over-respect attacks like by jumping all over the place. So the more you can do that, the more you can stay in the pocket close to the boss, the faster you will see all the bosses fall apart, essentially.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, that's in general, like the dailies, the progress, general outlook. I don't know if I mentioned anything there that you want to go deeper into, or you're wondering.
Okay, so yeah, I have a question. So like, to really learn a boss, should you be going in there? Because I know like my character's kind of like over damaged for some of the bosses I haven't even done yet. So like, if I want to learn a boss, should I be attempting on a different character that's like in that range of level, or will I still be able to learn even if I'm like overtuned for a boss?
It's kind of up to you, but I always think about it like, if you put me in like World of Warcraft on a character that's completely decked out and you put me on the first boss, I'll probably still be struggling because I don't really know. I've never seen the boss before, and I don't really know how the game works. So
yeah,
I think you'll very quickly, maybe like one or two bosses might be pretty easy, but you'll very quickly run into things where it's not just you go in, you press two buttons, and it's dead. Like I said, like in the beginning, especially because how quickly they push you through the content, it happens a lot. But those bosses in the beginning are also not very relevant, not as relevant to your progress in the game, right? Any equips they give you, you don't hold on to for very long, or not at all, and maybe all you get out of it is like a crystal or maybe a soul shard that will come into play like, a few months from now. So, I mean, I would say it's totally up to you. If you want to be like, I want to get that hardcore challenge and I want to do the monster like right at the level when it comes out. But you'll see that some bosses, if you play them right when they come out, they might be completely impossible. And some bosses, if you play them right when they come out, they will be very doable. And the further you go, also the bosses have different difficulty levels. So like once you get to Lotus, you've got the normal and the hard, right? Once you get to Lucid and Will, you've got the easy, the normal, and the hard. So you can also say like, okay, I'm gonna try, like maybe solo easy first, or I'm gonna try, solo normal first, and just see how that goes. And if that's too hard, maybe you do easy. So you can kind of pick your challenge always later on, or you can do it once and say like, it's too easy. I'm gonna equip like unequip 5 equips, and then try it again, and just make it harder for yourself. You could do that. But yeah, it'll come down to what kind of experience you're looking for. Maybe one of the things you want to do for YouTube is like, trying CRA on a completely unfunded character or something that I've never played before, and just maybe part of the content is just failing miserably. I don't know what type of content you want to make, but being goofy about it. But it is pretty, from what I've seen, it's pretty saturated. Yeah, compared to like how many people play the game and how much content there is out there. There's quite a lot out there. So you do want to find something that kind of makes you and makes you stand out, and makes people want to tune in to the stuff. Unless you're just a purely hobby thing and you don't really care about it that much, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could do either one. I prefer for my first clear for it to be challenging and kind of be like, I'm just gonna try and see how far I can really get. And then getting that clear will feel really good. And then, like I said, maybe if it's like a full-time run, like a 28-minute run, you're like, okay, it's cool that I know that I can do it, but I'm not going to spend like half an hour every single week on this one character for this one boss. This is just silly. So either I'll do a easier difficulty, or I find a party with 2 or 3 people to kind of like speed it up. And then maybe when I make a big upgrade, I'll try to solo it again and see how much faster it is, and kind of like intermittently check on like, maybe now is the time to start soloing it. Because if you do solo, you get a bigger chunk of the crystal value. You can make more money per week that way. Maybe you get more of the drops. The further you go, the more rare the drops will be. So the faster you can start running in a smaller party, the faster you can get higher odds of actually making the upgrades and getting the pieces.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah, I guess for me it's been like like I attempted Princess No, and like it wasn't hard, but it was like I don't think I had enough damage. So like to me right now is learning like if I even have enough damage for it to be successful with taking that much time. Like learning like if I do spend the whole 28 minutes, is it actually possible for me to win damage wise? That's really what I don't know right now.
Yeah, you can use this as an indicator. So Princess No is pretty quickly behind here. So she's like around that same range. Princess No is just, she's content from a different region that hasn't passed kind of like through the Korea check. It's from Japanese area, from JMS, and therefore that content is just very off. You probably noticed like the whale in phase 1 is one of the worst experiences of your life. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the limited damage on everything. It's not the worst for DA for the second and third and fourth stage, right? Because you could just pop Frenzy and just stand on top of him and they kind of just all die. That's kind of cool. But the Princess No boss fight itself, like in the beginning, once he like cages you a bunch and then chain cages and you're just standing there, like I can't really do anything. But as you get stronger, you'll blow her up. The main reason why Princess No is useful, not as much for the DA but like the tickets for the secondary, right? Most classes, their best in slot secondary is from the Princess No drops. So it's one of those things where you struggle in the beginning, but the earlier you start doing it, the faster you can start getting to a really good piece. But the second thing that she can drop is accessories that will come into play like throughout the like early game already, but specifically like in the mid and the late, well, mostly early and mid game. Those will come into play for potentially becoming really, really strong damage and potentially even as well drop rate pieces. And with Transfer Hammer will also allow you to get more rare drops reliably to high upgrade status by basically sacrificing more of the drops that you have more of, and then transferring that power over to a higher level item, so you don't have to risk losing that higher level item that's way harder to replace. So it's, again, like the sooner you do start doing the boss and start getting clears, the more likely you are to get to the point where you have a good amount of drops, a good amount of backups, spares of items, which will allow you to make other choices when it gets trickier to determine like what do I upgrade and where do I go. Because in the beginning it's just like, oh yeah, you just Star Force everything to 10. Like that's pretty, it's pretty straightforward. Or you get like rare or epic potential and then you just throw some cubes on there to see if you can hit like 6% HP. Like that's very straightforward in the beginning. But when it becomes like, oh, this project is going to be like 10 build, this project is going to be like 15 build, this one on average needs 6 backups, things start getting complicated. If you have no backups, but you have like one item that has like 10 backups, then it becomes pretty simple again, because it's like, well, this is the only option I really have, so I guess I'll just do this, right? And that's kind of how the game works after a while, is that you get unlucky at some things, and you get lucky at some other things, and even though on average you'll want to, reach those milestones and upgrade certain stuff, depending on what you get as drops and what your RNG is, you might have to do things a little differently, because it just won't make any sense to just, follow like one specific guide when you just don't have the drops, you don't have the backups.
Okay.
But Princess No is good for the rings. Most of the bosses, so if you check in game and you open up the Maple Guide, have you used this one before?
The Maple Guide?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's been my main thing I've been using, to be honest.
Yeah. So this used to be dog shit, and they cleaned it up a lot and made it way more intuitive and useful, and you can teleport around, you can find all the areas, you get some extra rewards, you got the maps, the special zones, and then you got all the bosses, right? So for the bosses, you can see on the right side, you can see all their drops. And so that's why also they're like included in the dailies command, is because of the drops as well. All of the important ones are incorporated in there, and the not so important ones like Omni CLN, I don't even know why that guy's in the game, are not included as much. You see, yeah, so you can see the pieces, you can see the set bonuses, you can see the stats early on. Might not be, as obvious to you immediately if you see a piece, because that's one of the major things. And when people talk about like best in slot, it gets confusing really quickly, because just because you see a piece doesn't mean, like, as a new player, you have no real sense of what that piece could become or what it could represent, right? Or what the alternatives, where it would rank compared to any alternatives that you could be wearing there. So, yeah, to kind of figure that out, you want to go a little bit deeper into some of the systems like Flames and Star Forcing and like Transfer Hammer and cubing, kind of knowing to which extent can you actually upgrade things, because things really start getting value because of the synergy on your account. Like, there's very few individual pieces where it's like, oh, if you have this, then everything else is just bad. It's mostly like, how far do you upgrade it, and which other pieces do you have that synergize with it.
Okay.
But yeah, early on you don't really have many options, so you just kind of like equip anything you can get, right? But as you keep going, more options become possible, and some options are more temporary, and some options are more permanent. And then if things are more permanent, then you tend to push them a little bit harder, upgrade them a little bit more, because then you just get more value out of your upgrade, right? It's that simple. But yeah, if you're kind of like still struggling and more, not struggling, I mean, it sounds very negative, but like more trying to find your way and more kind of like making the rounds through the game for your first playthrough, in general, you'll hold on to things very long. So it's not necessarily the worst idea to upgrade things a little bit more, because you'll just, you'll get more value out of it. That's fine. One of the first thing I did, I don't know if you play the same way or if you want to do that, was basically just follow the quests that were available on my first character, and I basically just tried to do all the quests. This way, you can see all the areas, you can see all of the content. You can do something with that if you want to. You can do some voice acting. I don't know if you want to do some meme shit. But the main thing that it taught me is like, okay, well, which of these quests are important? Which of these quests lead to content that I like? And which ones don't at all? And then after doing that on your first character, for the next character, I knew like, okay, this I can skip, this I don't like, this I don't want, this I do like. And that made the rest of the playthroughs way more streamlined. And because there is a lot of dead dialogue and lore in some regions, and some regions are really cool, and others are just not my cup of tea. But I feel like unless you give it a try one time, you can't really know. Plus, once you've gone through everything one time, then all of the updates and all the patches is just one little extra thing, but you already know what it's building on, And if you're going off purely off of like what someone else said, that person could go off of what someone else said and what if someone, and you're playing like broken telephone, right? And sometimes you'll have just misunderstandings will happen, or you'll just won't even know that certain content even exists or is an option just because no one happened to mention it. But if you follow the quest lines, you get taken everywhere,
Okay.
So the light bulb is basically like an excerpt of all of the available quests. So it already takes the more relevant ones. If you really want to do all of them, then you go into the quest log and you go available and you just go ham. I guess there's plenty to do. You'll be, but I don't know if you're much of a quester or not. That's a very
I actually
personal
have
thing.
I'm doing mainly quests only on my Mercedes, so most of the leveling on it was just through quests. So I've done a lot of quests, but I know that I probably should be doing important quests on my Demon Avenger.
Yeah, some things. So they made a lot of the boss pre-quests basically account shared. So once you got them the first time done, and like the new area quests as well, right? In the Vanishing Journey and Choo-Choo, like all of the Arcane River ones, and Grandis after that. As long as you do them once on one character, you could just auto-complete them with the next one. That wasn't the case for the longest time. So then you had to redo everything.
I don't think that was the thing back then.
Yeah, no. There were a few things. So it was Lotus and Damien. For those, they did it pretty early, but everything else, basically, you just had to do on every single character again. And, you know, if you add all of that time up, it's quite a bit. But, yeah, now the only thing that doesn't share is basically, like, the limit of having to kill the Root Abyss normal ones 5 times before you can do hard. That's still there per character, but everything else is just shared within the account now. So that saves a lot of time. And that gives you really that value for that first playthrough, too, that you know you're investing in your whole account and you're going to be, you know, gaining time from that investment as you keep playing.
That's good. That's good to know, because I did not know that.
Okay, so Hard Damien, yeah. And are you planning to do that? Planning to do Hard Damien solo or with like a guild or something? I don't know if you're doing that.
I don't really know anybody on Hyperion, so everything I've been doing is solo. Yeah, so I guess mainly probably solo for everything.
Yeah, there's like cool things, especially with Glide as well, that you can do if you're doing Damien. The big problem with Damien, I mean, you haven't fought him probably yet, but he has quite a few skills that like put him in the air, right? So he doesn't become as targetable, and that can be very annoying. But the thing that DA can do, and this is more like to min-max your damage a little bit, but you can, they did a while ago, they reduced the ceiling of the map, like where you would get stuck on as a player. So you can go quite high up in the air and then glide, you know, because we're demons, we got our wings. So one of the cool things is that when a lot of other classes are basically just kind of like on the ground, just waiting for him to be targetable and waiting for him to be able to get hit. We'll see if he goes up in the air. But since I have Frenzy around me, if so the Nether Shields follow him, so that's already nice extra damage, right? If he's in the air, I could just do this and like glide through him, and then I could do some constant damage when he's there. And the other cool thing that we can do is with the yellow balls, the Cheetos, as some people might call them, is that you could just tank them. So if you put on Revenant, you could just jump into them, just tank them all, take a whole bunch of self-damage, and then just counter that damage onto him, essentially. And basically no other class could do something like this. And now your damage is lower because you just tanked all that damage, so now your final damage goes up, and then you can do your burst after that. So it's like a weird synergy where many other classes don't really have any opportunity to do that. They have to get really scared of certain attacks. But then we can turn that in our favor by taking the self-damage. But a lot of this is practice and like the positioning and how long do you have for certain attacks, you know. How many seconds do you have? There's going to be a lot of death, you know, a whole lot of death and destruction. But I think that's the cool part as well, that you're just like figuring out patterns. Like now we don't have Revenant, but now I can still do this. Like I can glide kind of close to him, and that can make him do damage. But like these balls, like, they're very scary. But
so definitely use Glide.
Yeah, Glide is really, really cool. Yeah, if you could use Glide properly, you get a whole lot of... It's just more fun as well, you know? Like, who could do this?
Yeah.
Like, you just, like, glide around, just do this thing. It's like, hey, I'm doing damage to you, bro. Like, and he's just, like, sucking his attacks. I don't know, I think it's really fun. I think if you're playing a demon without Glide, you're missing a whole, like, dimension of fun, I think. And, yeah, survivability as well. There's definitely a lot of functionality in it as well. It's not just, like, playing around and just memeing, but yeah, like I said, I didn't even know I had a flash jump for the longest time, so I was gliding everywhere. I was doing everything glide.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense to use gliding, especially for bossing. So.
Yeah. For mobbing, the flash jump does make more sense because you just traverse a little bit better horizontally. But like I said, like the harder the bosses get, the more you want to use the verticality as well. And then up jumping is one thing. And that's another thing as well, like with up jump, you have like different moments where you up jump will give you different height. But if you use glide, you can just tap glide and it can interrupt your height. So you can, like I could kind of control how high I up jump without needing to be so peculiar or particular about the timing of when I use up jump. Like if I want to go the highest, I need to up jump here. If I want to do short one, I can do like here. But if I want to go mid, I have to do that. Or I could just tap whenever and then just press glide when I get to that height and it'll just interrupt the glide. So it's
Okay.
gives you that extra option as well. But yeah, it's just a matter of just going in and just pressing the buttons a bunch and just kind of see what happens. That's how I discovered my flash jump, because I was just like pressing a bunch of buttons and suddenly I flash jump. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even know I could do that.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely put that back on.
Yeah, I think it's fun. But yeah, for mobbing, if it just gets in a way, then you just, toggle it. And that's why it's cool to have those toggles that really are, more mobbing versus bossing, that you can have a safe spot where you like toggle it. It's not something you have to do like in the middle of a boss fight in combat, because that's a little spooky. And yeah, that comes into play later to some extent. So as much as you can like keep that away for as long as possible, I would do that.
Okay.
It takes the fun out of it and brings the min-maxing out of it, into it, right? My goal is always, like with these sessions as well, is try to find out like, what is fun for people and try to maintain the fun, and adding just enough of the slightly more annoying stuff that gives you really good value so that you can keep doing mostly the fun stuff for as long as possible.
Okay. I'm writing all this down because
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Whenever there's a pause, I assume someone is writing stuff down. Yeah.
yeah. I don't want you to think I'm not listening to that. I'm writing it down just to make sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't mention that, but I also record these and put them on YouTube as well, so you can always watch them back as well. But I guess you'll have whatever you want to take from this on YouTube as well later. So I'll be interested to see how you use that.
Definitely. Okay. So all right. So I guess my next question is when like on my previously, like 3 years ago when I played, my main focus was just Legion. Like I would just level as much as I could, and I got to like 7.6k. But this time I'm trying to like do a different path. When exactly is the best time to focus on Legion and then focus on your main?
Yeah, so I always like having a balance of the two. There is definitely, for a longer period of time, more value coming in from playing your main now because of the extra access, because of 6-job being introduced, right? And because of your V Matrix slots building out way faster now, and maxing out at 260 gives you access to way more skill nodes, boost nodes, and that kind of stuff. So just purely leveling on your main has gotten more value, definitely up to 260. But it always comes down to a balance. So if you ever feel like, I just don't want to train my main today, like I've done so much Demon Avenger, like it's just, then, there's always another character that could use a little bit of work. And the beauty is that, it's just another way of making your main character stronger without having to play your main character. And so the benefit is still there. The general balance I would look at is basically just what I have here in the progression grid. So you've got the Legion level is one of the metrics here. So as long as you have like some Legion level working your way up to 260, basically just like the foundational, the nice leveling links, some of the maybe like IED and bossing ones if you want to start bossing, just the flat damage percentage ones that help in both mobbing and bossing. As long as you've got those like a little bit built out, that'll be fine for damage. If you're looking at it like in terms of the value of your account, there's one major thing there, and that's the Legion coins, right? The Legion coins in the beginning are just purely cycling back into being able to afford the upgrades for the Legion, of course. But pretty quickly you can start using like extra coupons, and you want to try to avoid using too much the EXP coupons, because you'll have a lot of events going on, and they will be boosting your EXP. And you'll mostly want to use the drop rate coupons, especially early on when you don't have much drop rate yet. You won't have familiars coming in yet. You won't have drop rate on your accessories yet, because that's legendary. That's a big investment cost. So the drop rate coupon is going to relatively represent a really big part of your total drop rate. And a lot of this game is just time gating, right? In dailies and in weeklies. But if you can increase the drop rate a lot from a weekly boss, you can essentially get like 2 weeks worth of progress in 1 week. Maybe not in terms of the money, but in terms of the chance of getting the drops that are limited for your character. And in that way, you can buy yourself, by investing into drop rate, you can buy yourself weeks or months worth of progress on average. There's always RNG involved, but on average towards progressing to the next goal, because you'll have like 2, 3, 4 weeks worth of chances of drops in 1 week. And so that's why those coupons, and especially just the Legion shop in general, but mostly the drop rate coupons are really, and the meso-obtain coupons as well, right? The yellow ones are ways of increasing the value once you've kind of like capped on what you can do. So you can imagine like if you're killing monsters in the map and you're killing all the monsters on every spawn, and it's the best map, well, now you got all the EXP you can possibly get. But now there's coupons. So now that the quantity is set, now you can look at the quality of the kills, and now you can start increasing the quality per kill. And that's how you want to look at bosses as well. Like you kill a boss in a week, well, now you're capped. But if you can increase the quality of the drops by increasing your drop rate, now you can still kind of artificially make more bosses appear, even though you're only killing one, you're getting the rewards of multiple essentially. So that's one thing where once that ball starts rolling, you'll really start feeling that around between 3 and 4K Legion is that the ball really starts rolling. Then you got all those foundational characters ready, and every next character will get substantially stronger than the last one and will take way less time. So one of the main things I usually say is I think it's really good to either every day or like every other day just make a new character and try to get it up to like level 60 or 70 or 100, whatever you want to do, but like get some progress on it. Because as soon as a character gets level 60, those 60 levels count for the Legion. And you have 42 characters who count for the Legion, so you have 37 more characters. So the first 60 characters of the next 37 characters will all count for your Legion, all of them. So for you, 37 times 60, that's 1842, that's 2,220 Legion. So that brings you to 3K. Those levels are going to be way easier to get than any other levels on any other characters, right? Because they're already at 120. So if you're purely just trying to get like gains from the Legion for very little effort, just mass produce, essentially. And then once you've got mass produced, now you have a little bit of feeling for the characters as well, like, which ones do I kind of like, which ones do I absolutely hate, and then you can start categorizing the characters. So, you'll have a category of like absolutely hate, just give me like event EXP coupons on it, or otherwise I'm not touching them. And then there's going to be a group of characters where like it's okay, it's like you're pretty neutral, so maybe you use a level up event, maybe you use something a bit more interactive that takes a bit more effort, but you can still, you're still playing them. And then there's the classes you really like, and those are generally the ones that I would not use events on too much, because then you'll have more time to enjoy them. So that this way you like minimize the characters' playtime on the ones you hate, and then it becomes like looking at the events that are going on. So if event EXP is something that's just really good for your main character, you probably just want to use it on your main character. But you're gonna get to a point pretty quickly where there's an event and you're like, this event doesn't really have much for my main character. Like it's not really beneficial. Or it's like an event skill, like the Identisk explosions, right? Where you have like 30 per day per character, where that really, those first 30 explosions and like the map clear is really, really good. But after that, you got like a big drop off on the value of your time. That's usually a pretty good event that you can do. Like, I'm going to do like 2 characters a day. So I'm going to do my main and like 1 character that needs progress. And once that character reaches what I want it to reach, be it like level 2 link skill or time to be able to do like daily Zakum runs, like level 100, or it reaches like level 140 for the rank S Legion block, and then I'm just going to do a 2nd character per day. But it's all about, I think, consistency and just doing it a little bit, like every day or every other day. There's just a few things that you're doing, so you're never really overwhelmed by it, but you can see that steady progress.
Okay, and yeah, so like with this event, the strawberry event right now, I know it's probably like a great time to level links, right?
Yeah, it's most likely still pretty good for your main, but there will be good value. And usually the problem is for characters that you're trying to get from level 200 to 210. Yeah, it's going to be either like level up potions, but then again, you want to kind of look at which items are possible and then where in your account those items would be possible. So there would be just EXP coupons. Those typically scale pretty well all the way up to 250. So you probably want to prioritize your main on that. There's like burning events. That's going to be just not even relevant for your main, right? So there's Mega Burn up to 150, Terra Burn up to 200, and then Hyper Burn up to 260. your character is going to get far enough that by the time a next Hyperburn comes along, it'll be waste for that character too. So you kind of want to keep in mind, like, which character would you possibly want to use these things on when they happen. Because like Mega Burn is once a month. There's a Mega Burnator item from your login that you can get. And then Terra Burn or Terra Burnator happens every now and then for events as well. As we have progressed, that used to be super rare. The Hyperburn event used to be a Terra Burn event, and that was WoW. And now it's like an afterthought because, you know, compared to a Hyperburn, a Terra Burn is like nothing, you know. You're stopping at 200 versus stopping at 260, which is just a monumental difference.
Yeah.
So as long as you get your character kind of like in that order of like what kind of character are they to you in your Legion, that will help you whenever an event comes around to be like to prioritize, like, this is where I use them on. And the main thing is that with items like Strawberry Farm, EXP coupons and all that, is that you can get levels without having to fund the characters at all. So like Extreme Growth Potions, I know if you've seen those around probably, right?
Yeah, I actually have 21 of them right now because of the strawberry.
We got a filthy ticket buyer, guys. We got a season pass. We got a season pass buyer.
Yeah.
Caught red-handed. Yeah. Yeah. So those are really great for like levels between like 140 and 175 or something. You could just get really easy levels. So if you're just trying to get as many Legion levels out of those potions, you want to spread them out. But if your goal is to try to get a level character to 200 for a good level double S Legion block, or to level 3 Link to level 210, then you might want to focus them more on one individual character, and then predominantly on a character with a good Link, with a good Legion buff, and one that you don't like training at all, right? So there is a degree of like personal preference, and then there is the exclamation mark links, and this has like all of the Link skills and all of the Legion buffs of all the characters in the game. And I've organized them here based on what I think are the more foundational, more all-around ones, and then the more niche ones further down to the right. So that basically comes with a general order of, this is the order in which I would push characters. If you want to do it like purely optimally, you get them like all to level 60, and then go back to the top, and then all to level 70, you know, and then back to the top, and then all to level 100, and then back to the top, and all to level 120. Because those are like the intervals, right, between the levels of the Legion block and the levels of the Link skills. But, you know, you can also just do like, oh, I'm going to get a character to 100, because now I can start like killing Zakum daily, which is a decent chunk of EXP for very little time invested. And then you can, if you just have like 3 or 4 characters you do Zakum daily on, that takes like, I don't know, like 5 minutes of your day. But the amount of EXP you get might be way more than physically training them. So as long as you have a few characters on like rotation, and then, oh, this character reaches 140, I'm going to move it out. 140 is the reason I say 140 is not just for the Legion block, but also because you have 42 characters, and you have a few characters are going to be higher level because of events. And then if everything else is 140, you'll reach 6k, and that's a really nice milestone for like the end of mid game. And also unlocks, if you buy the upgrades, it unlocks the entire grid. So now you get much more. Hopefully by that time your main character is also, you know, like past 260. And this is when you start making really big moves in terms of your hyperstat, your Legion building, which Link skills you use, right? Because up until this point you've got like 5 Link skills, so you just throw it all in there. But once you got like 14 Link skills, 16 Link skills, 20 Link skills, now you have to start making choices on, what am I doing? Am I mobbing or am I bossing, you know? And then based on whether you're mobbing or you're bossing, you start making the puzzle of like, well, how much critical rate do I need? How much critical damage do I want? How much IED do I need when I'm bossing? And then you start fixing the puzzle between your hyperstat, but you know, where all of the stats kind of like overlap. And that's when you start making a more separate preset for, because you have presets for pretty much everything right now at this point, for like when I'm mobbing, when I'm bossing, and then you switch. And that's one of the great things about the new update that's coming from Korea, is that we'll have presets as well for the inner ability. So, you know, you can get more drop rate if you're trying to kill bosses, for example, like kill the boxes at the end, right? Or maybe you need cooldown reduction or critical rate or attack speed or something when you're mobbing, and then you can switch to that. So, and they'll have full character presets. So you can just program like, if I'm going to do mobbing, I want this preset in hyperstat, this one in the Legion, this one there, and you just click one button and boom, it switched all the presets in one go. And as you build that up, it'll be a big time saver, trust me. Because once you're like further in the game, you're trying to min max a little bit, and you're like, okay, I'm mobbing, I'm mobbing on a character that has a, let's see, I'm mobbing on a mage, but it has buff duration. Okay, so I need this setup, you know. It's like, okay, and then we're training on a regular mage that doesn't have, okay, this one, and then I have to switch the middle stats around. Because once you have all the characters, now there's more value in like which characters do you put on the grid, you know. In the beginning, you're just putting everything on there, but then you want to start prioritizing what stat is the member bonus. And then once that's kind of like maxed out, you start looking at, okay, but how much grid bonus do they give? Like, how big is the piece? And then once those are all on there, you're going to be like, okay, which one gives more Legion raid power? Because that then determines how quickly you get your coins. So there's, you just start, you know, fighting different fights essentially. You just start looking at like, well, what is the next thing I can kind of like min max on? But you can also like not get into that too much, you know, if that's not fun for you. But I think eventually you kind of roll into that. So learning to find the fun in that, I think, keeps the game interesting and fun, and makes it feel a little bit less like chores and, you know, homework kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which can at times.
Is drop rate more important than meso rate, I'm assuming?
So the state of the game that we're currently in, they synergize, so they're both important. Your chance of getting a bag to drop from a monster is not 100% by default, so you need some drop rate. Some drop rate will increase your money, and then some meso-obtain will also increase your money. So you need both of them. Meso-obtain is probably percentage-wise a bit more important early on to make that initial money, to afford getting more drop rate and more equips that can have drop rate, so that then you can get more backups to drop and have more money while you're training. And then when you have events and you put the money and the backups and the event together, then that's when you can make like optimal gains. So especially on your first character, and I would say probably still on your second character, meso-obtain is still very important. But once your whole account starts making more money from the boss crystals, so you have more bossing mules that bring in more money, then that shifts quite a bit towards just full on drop rate. Yeah. For that, I have details as well. So if you check exclamation mark drop rate, I have a command here with information on that talks about, you know, like the terms, what do they even mean, like drop rate, meso-obtain, light mode, and like item drop rate, meso drop rate, the differences between those things, how familiars are connected, you know, coupons, how things stack, because that is not always obvious either. And kind of like which setups you're trying to look for in the mid game, in the late game, in the end game. And here are some situations where, you know, if you're like fully decked out, this is how much drop rate you could mathematically have. And if you're just a normal mortal human being, then this is how much you'll probably have instead.
Okay. And I know you said familiars. Like, when do you get into that? And like, how does the drop rate and stuff affect that? Like, how much do you want to have before you start getting familiars?
So early on, well, I'm gonna shock you, but familiars, I have a command for it with information. Yeah, I hear the shock in your voice. So this has like all the details that go into, you know, like the familiar gauge, like how long can you summon them, how do their stats change, what do the colors mean, if you want to rank them up, how expensive is that, what are the odds. What is the value of points if you extract them, right? It's just like all of the brass tacks, just the details. And then here's a little bit about the badges, because you can imagine in the beginning the badges, like getting an extra, you know, 1% attack or something, doesn't really change anything for your damage. But once you're min-maxing, you're kind of like done with certain systems and they've just kind of capped out, you want to look for, you know, where can I make some more improvements? So eventually you'll look at like, you know, which are the 8 badges that I select for my familiar badges that give me like a passive stat, and how does that synergize with the rest of my team, you know? But this is like very far down the road, of course, but this is like the degree to which you start like trying to farm monsters and trying to get their cards, you know, added to the collection so you can pick those badges. Basically on the bottom, there's advice here on like what to do with the familiar. So pretty much early on, the best things you can get is any kind of drop rate and 15% IED. Because IED is just, early on, you typically don't have much of it. DA has a lot of it. The one thing we lack is critical rate. We are very low on critical rate. That is being somewhat corrected in Korea. We got an extra 15% there, so that's really nice. But it's mostly drop rate, so either small amount or just drop rate. And as you can see here, that will translate to either a 30% from increased item drop rate by a small amount, or increased item drop rate is 50%. So like this one will be from rare, right? So from the blue cards. So that's already the same as like a Legion coin, Legion coupon, but it stacks with it. So if your base drop rate is just regular 100% and you have this one and you have a coupon, now you have double the chance of stuff dropping essentially. So it just snowballs, because then now more familiars drop, and now you can do more with familiars, and now more items drop. But very early on, you mostly will get familiars by just leveling your characters, your Legion mules. So I would just find every card that you find, just throw them in storage and just reveal them on any character where you can make some gains. So just reveal them all on your Demon Avenger by clicking the little question mark, right? Have you done that before?
No, I have not.
So if you have a card in your inventory, you double click it, then it'll go here into your collection.
Okay.
And then once it's in your collection, once it's in your collection, you select it, it'll have the question mark here, and then you pay, 35,000 mesos, and then it'll reveal its potential. And then like 99 times out of 100, it's ultra garbage, and you can't do anything with it. And then you can extract them. So if you go to extraction, this will show all the ones that you haven't locked. So if something has a nice potential, you can put a lock on it, and then that way you won't accidentally extract it. So if it does have just shitty lines and you don't need it, then you can extract them, and then they will give you points. And then these points you can spend in the shop. But the shop doesn't have much in it, and it's in the guide as well. But basically, the familiar essence is kind of nice. If you train a lot, eventually your familiar gauge will run out. This is limited, so as you have monsters summoned, this will deplete. And if you want to refresh it, the only way to do is wait for a reset, then it'll automatically fully recharge, or use the familiar essence, and it'll replenish half of it. And then, you could do booster packs and all that, but that's when you have a lot of cards. So if you have a lot of different cards, just throw them all into any character that can get gains. That can get either 15% IED, or that can get any kind of drop rate. And just look for that. Just look for up to the rare increases item drop rate. That'll be really good. And then the common or rares can have 15% IED. So, and you also unlock more slots as you get more medals. So, more badges. As you get one badge, you get your second slot. So that's really easy to do, really valuable. There are certain sets here that just have like 3 little monsters, and that's it. And it'll give you that badge really quickly, and then you can unlock your second slot. But the third slot is 10 badges, which you can imagine is a lot more work. So that's something for much later, But having like 15% IED, 1 drop rate, that'll set you up really, really nicely. Even if it's just the 30%, the small amount, that's already a huge difference.
So 15% IED and then 1 drop rate?
Yeah, if you can get that, that'd be really nice. And then usually what I do after that is, if you still get a lot of different cards, I would just look for what is maybe the next side character you want to play, or what is maybe going to become a bossing mule. Then I start opening them there and get that 15% IED again. The drop rate there isn't as important, because you're really there just to get the money for the value for the crystal, and that's not affected by the drop rate at all. So you're really just looking for that IED. And also because it can take a while, so you won't have like thousands and thousands of cards. Really, familiars become more complicated and more important is when you train in an area where they drop, and then you can get a lot of the same card. Because now what you can start doing is, what is the term exactly? Is fusing them. So if I have a bunch of the same cards here, well, they won't show up because they're all locked. But what if I unlock one? How do I do that again? Okay, info, click, unlock. There we go. And then go to fusion and select one of them, except for that one that is unlocked, of course. Then you can see that they show up here. So all the ones that are the same card that are unlocked will show up here. Yeah. And what I can do is select them and then you'll see how much it is. And again, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like the numbers are all in the thing. But then you can fuse them together. And then this bar will go up. And then once this bar is all the way filled, and the level of the card is also max, so you have to get it level 5, which means you have to have it summoned with you while you're killing monsters around your level. So this is also why it's useful to have a second slot or a third slot available, because you'll want to have drop rate familiar out. And if you want to also start leveling familiars, you want to have a second or a third slot to also passively like level the familiar. And then once you fuse all the cards in there that you got from the training session, and then once it's all the way full, then you can do the rank up. And then yeah, but it's a really scuffed system because you just get one rank up and then one reveal, and then that's it. If it's shitty, then you're shit out of luck, which will happen most of the time. If it's good, then you're a king and you're a god and you just hit the lottery essentially. And the main reason we want to do that, make those epics, is because there you can get the drop item drop rate by a large amount. And that is plus 100% drop rate. And that is like the holy grail of just like all success for all characters basically comes down to having this familiar in their account essentially. Because this whole system doesn't exist in Korea, where the game is built around and where the balance is built around. So we can just pull 100% extra drop rate out of our ass and just use that to just fast track the game essentially and kind of like cheat our way through it.
Okay, all right. So that's something that's like really rare though, right?
It is relatively rare, but the standard deviation is very wide. So some people will get it on like their first or second epic, and some people will actually just have to make 100. So it's probably a good idea for yourself to kind of set a boundary on this is how long I'm willing to wait for this. And if I hit like 50% or 60%, of course it's less than 100, but it's still really good. And you could be like, you know, because at a certain point, you'll be like, you'll want to train maybe in Grandis, you know, where familiars don't drop anymore. And because you'll want to get fragments, because you want to build out your 6th job and that kind of stuff. And those two are just completely separate, because there are no areas where you can build on your 6th job and build on fragments and also and get familiars. Those things are completely exclusive from each other. There's no overlap there.
Okay.
But the faster you get your drop rate and then you start working on fragments, the more fragments will drop. So, you know, it does... Yeah, it will eventually pay back for itself, even if you do get unlucky, because it's just one of those necessary evils, honestly, is this one. So yeah, maybe you can make it fun, maybe you leave an area on a character, maybe another character in your account kind of enters that area and can kind of take over, so that character can still get decent EXP, decent money there, and then your main character can get better EXP, you know, different kinds of progress in around the same time. That's something that, you know, depending on your luck, you might have to make choices there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. A lot of notes, probably.
Yeah, definitely. I'm making sure I got all this down.
Yeah. Yeah, and some probably
familiar
some
is like
commands.
the biggest thing for me that I had no idea about. So,
yeah, the introduction of the system was probably one of the worst. They didn't have the balance properly, and like the amount of cards that you could get and how good the lines were and everything. We used to have familiars, like there were maps. Like the regular Junior Boogie could just drop epics as a card, and if you had enough drop rate, every single Junior Boogie you killed would drop like 2 to 3 cards. So you could just, you know, just 2 to 3 epics per monster. Like the amount of the scale, you know, the thousands of cards you could get, and the ease with which you could get a whole bunch of stats. Yeah, they knocked that down like within half a day, and then completely redid a bunch of stuff and went back to the drawing board. Because, yeah, they really completely messed up the balance on that one. Probably way overboard in the beginning, and now probably a little bit too much on the tedious side. I think is a pretty uncontroversial opinion to have. But, yeah, it happens when stuff doesn't exist in Korea and they kind of have to come up with their own balance. It's a bit more jank.
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I think okay, so the next thing for me is learning like the flames.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you probably have something for that, right?
Yeah, I've got the Flames video. For DA, it's different. And in your case, a lot simpler.
Okay, perfect.
um, yeah,
That's
because we
perfect.
our main stat is HP, right? Our secondary stat is technically strength, but because you don't have any base strength and you don't really have any percentage strength, it doesn't multiply at all. So it's almost, you can almost treat it like it doesn't exist, essentially. So the only thing that will give you damage is HP and weapon attack. So you're just looking for high HP and you're looking for possibly for some weapon attack with that, and that's pretty much it. The only thing that's like even more important and way more important is getting a good weapon flame, because that's where you get a percentage of your. You can get a percentage of your base attack with how good the flame is. So. And since early on you have low star force, so the relative value of weapon attack is higher, right? Your total weapon attack is not quite as high in the beginning. Mostly all of your weapon attack just comes from your weapon, right? But if you look at, actually like my character, if you get to higher star force, every single item has a decent amount of weapon attack. See, like this one has 93, 94, 79, 83. Well, this one has 15 because it's only flamed. But yeah, because I'm on the DA, right? So you can see my flames kind of see HP and weapon attack. This one just HP and attack. And then the weapon is very important that you get like the attack power activated for the flame. And then if you can get anything in terms of like damage and boss damage, that's nice. But it's really about that attack power early on, because it's just such a large percentage of the total attack power on your account. But yeah, you can see like these pieces are 126, 126, 118. You add all of that up together, and then you get that attack power. Like you see, it's near 6,000. So if you see here, you can see these numbers, right? But early on, your total weapon attack, I don't know if you can see it, but your total weapon attack is 700. So what percentage of that is your weapon? Half, almost, right? So any kind of increase there will make a huge difference. So when it comes to weapons, it's a bit tricky because every tier of the... Okay, really quick flame rundown. Basically, powerful flames go between tier 3 and 6. Eternal flames between tier 4 and 7. So they're a bit better on the low end and a bit better on the high end. But powerful flames are way more common, so you'll mostly hit good stuff with the powerful flames. Just, value in numbers. What do these tiers mean? They mean completely different things for every single level item and for every single stat that they can get. I know, really convenient. So to make it more convenient, we usually work with a flame score. So we try to redirect all of the possible value that a flame can have for your character to one number, which tries to equate this is roughly how much of your main stat it would be. So, if you're a warrior, this is how much strength it would be equivalent to. We kind of try to redirect all of the relevant numbers. So all of the weapon attack, all of the all stat percentage, that kind of stuff. And that's based on a balance, not too dissimilar to this, on how much will you have of everything. Because everything gets multiplied when you're looking at your damage. So technically, if you add a little bit of all stat, technically what happened is the value of your stat went up a little bit, and the value of your total of your all stat went down a little bit, because all of these sources are internally additive. So if you're multiplying one additive source with another one, then if you have a little bit more of it, technically the value of every relevant number goes a little bit down, and of the other one goes a little bit up. But there is a certain balance. Again, it makes sense because of how long you have to move through the game. It makes sense with how many backups you need, and how many backups you could have possibly gotten, and how expensive it is, and how much money you could have realistically made, right? So if you keep somewhat in track with the efficiency, you'll also keep track with how do the stats compare to each other in terms of how much do they multiply each other, and how much value do they have relative to each other. And based on that, we came up with some numbers on that. And Seth made the score calculator, where you can, in the beginning, if you just have no idea where you started with, you can pick your stage of the game, and that's based on the progression grid, and you can pick your what is your main stat. So for you won't be in here, so you don't have to worry about this at all as a DA essentially. As a DA, really what you want to see is you want to hit the high end for HP basically, and then if you can get some attack with that, that's cool. But otherwise, just hit the high. But in the beginning, you're not going to be flaming a lot, so most of it is just get a good weapon flame. If you can hit a good weapon flame, that's like 90% of the battle. And then if the other stuff that can be flamed can get like a little bit of HP here, like that, like, oh, that's fine, dude. Get some HP here. Oh, that's super cool. But if, again, many small things make a whole, right? So if all of it has a little bit of HP and you add all of that together, it does become a decent amount. So eventually, once you get the permanent pieces, you start focusing on the items that have flame advantage over the ones that don't have flame advantage. And as you'll see the difference pretty quickly if you're flaming, if something has flame advantage or not. I mean, I'll let you guess if the Stone of Eternal Life has flame advantage.
No.
It actually, no, it doesn't, but it does have a tier 6 speed, so it actually might, but it is missing a... No, this one actually does have flame advantage, but this one is plagued by the level. Being level 0 is just, that's just no good. So flame advantage, usually it's easy to see by the amount of lines that you have, and then also by the individual number, but you'll have to train your eye a little bit for that. The video goes into that a bit more as well. But if you see an item with like a lot of different lines on it, it's most likely an item with flame advantage, because it'll always roll 4 different lines of added stats. I say 4, but sometimes it can look like 3 because they could also stack. So if it gives you strength and another line, for example, is strength and dex, it won't show up as 2 different numbers of strength. It will like condense into 1 number. But these are things that, they'll make more sense and you'll be able to see them as you go. But if you look at the Horntail necklace, for example, like this one just gives 2 magic attack and 7 intellect, and that's it. So this one just doesn't have flame advantage. But it's not something that like one Horntail necklace can have it and another one can't. It's linked to the name of the item. So essentially, when it comes to like non-flame advantage, really the only ones that are really important is all of the Gollux accessories, once you start getting into that, and all of the Sweetwater accessories. Those are the main things that basically, if you're flaming, they're very, very, very low priority. And everything else tends to have flame advantage, so you get really good value from... if you want to give him the DA flames. Yeah, I was going to say that, like, you'll see, as you're flaming, you'll see the numbers, you'll see them pop up, and very quickly what you'll be able to tell is, for example, HP flames, the easy way to tell is it's always the same number, just multiplied by 3 through 6 and 4 through 7, right? So if you see 2 numbers and 2 different flames that are HP, like this one is 1680, that's maybe a little bit harder to math out, but that could be 420, for example, right? That's a quarter. So this could be tier 4 for 420. So if you roll another one that's like 2100, then you know it is. Yeah, I already know it's 420, because then and then 2520 is a tier 6. So you're basically just looking for tier 5 or higher, tier 5 or tier 6 for HP, and then that's basically it. So once you start comparing the numbers, if the item is the same level and they both have flame advantage, it'll be the same numbers. So then you can start comparing it. You can see the CRA pieces, for example. That's usually where you get the earliest flames. You can see the 1350. You can see the 2250. Oh, that's 900 difference. So that's 2 tiers, because that's 450, and this is exactly 450 times 3, and this is 450 times 5. So now you know exactly, like, level 150 pieces, 1 tier is 450. Tier 5 or 6 is basically what you're aiming for. So 2250 or 2700, that'll be what you're aiming for. So yeah, once you figure out the HP for DA, it actually becomes really, really simple, because you just kind of go around all the things, try to get them all HP. That's cool. If you have more flames, then look for the ones that you can also get a little bit of attack. Attack is even more simple. Tier 1 is 1, Tier 2 is 2, Tier 3 is 3, and it goes from 1 through 7. And so, you see Magic Attack 4, that's a Tier 4. So that makes it really straightforward. And so for DA, you kind of want to know the tiers, but it's also, like, very, very simple. For the other classes, it gets too complicated, so we condense it to a flame score. And then, yeah, the video will demonstrate it even more and get to the details. So once in the beginning, you'll just use for other classes, you'll use the calculator to see what the flame score is. And then you can just compare it to the progression grid and see like, okay, what stage am I in? What range of level are the equips at? And then what are the numbers you look at? So early on, level 140 items around 70, level 150, 160 items closer to 80. Once you get end of mid-game, you still have level 140 items, they'll probably be closer to like 95-ish. And if you have like level 200 items, they'll be closer to 125.
Okay.
So the one that's more difficult is the weapon, and that's because the tiers are percentage of the base of the weapon. So for that, all you need to know is whether it's Flame Avenger or not. Again, Gollux and Sweetwater are really the only exceptions for any of the weapons that we wear. So you see the weapon base level is 160, like you have. Whoop. And your base attack is the white number is 205. And well, right now you see you don't have a flame number. So we'll take this one away. So if you were to hit a tier 6, that would be 82 weapon attack. And if you hit a tier 5, that's 63 weapon attack.
Okay.
And if you want to know like the flame score for your character, kind of, you could put it in here and put in like the 82 weapon attack. And the reason that we get the good weapon flames is because that's 328. So if you were to compare that, you know, for other flame scores, that's like 4 to 5 items flame basically combined into one flame. So that's why that's such high value, and that's why the weapon is such a high priority in terms of flaming it.
Okay, and you said not to like really worry about flames till like 260, I guess, or like hard Damien.
Well, you wouldn't really see flames very often early on. Like events will have them, and event shops, and then you really just want to focus on your weapon, make sure that's good, and then just kind of like I said, just bring the items that you are going to wear for a long time, and the items that have flame advantage, bring those up just evenly. But you won't really be buying any flames, no. You'll be buying flames and trying to get good flames probably when you get like arcane gear, honestly. So this is like when you've been clearing normal lucid for a while or moving into hard lucid and hard will. Until then, yeah, DAs don't get like an insane amount of damage from it. We get a lot of damage from star forcing. That's where we have like extra scaling, because star forcing gives a lot of stat, and we don't. But star forcing does not give, like, our HP doesn't go up with highest star force, right? You see, you have a 17 star, but it gives 255 HP, which is like, if you compare that to 66 stat for like another character, that's way more in terms of their scaling, because our scaling is like early game it's like 17 and a half HP per stat, and then later it's like 20 to 22 and a half, and end game is like 25. So if you compare that, this is like 10 stat, like, you know, like 15 stat worth, but they're getting 66. So to compensate for that, we have an extra calculation that you can see in the starting window, the beginner tab, which is Star Force conversion. And this converts all of the Star Force into HP, and once you hit certain intervals of Star Force, the conversion per star will go up. So it'll snowball, basically. So you can see for me, I've got 431 Star Force, and that transfers into 72,000 HP. So it does end up, you know, being quite a bit eventually. And that's also one of the reasons why event rings are actually not as good for Demon Avengers as you think. Like, if you look at the base stats, they look really good because they got a lot of HP on it. But because of how the things are calculated, the base HP and the flame HP actually gets cut in half compared to other sources of HP for Demon Avenger. And because they cannot be Star Force at all, we don't get that benefit from high Star Force on him. So even though these potentials are great and these are really nice, you tend to roll away and move away from event rings as a Demon Avenger earlier than from other classes.
Okay, yeah, I posted that ring on Reddit because I was confused on like how good the event rings are.
Yeah, well, early on they were still really good because they also have a lot of attack, right? So they're definitely really good. And most of the other alternatives, you'd have to Star Force them to like 16, 17 before they start overtaking them. But then they start, for Demon Avenger, they do start overtaking them pretty quickly.
Okay. And what would be like the earliest like ring that I would get that would pretty much replace one of those?
So probably the Kana treasure ring that can drop from Princess No. So
Okay.
that's the level 140 ring. And then there's some other rings that are really close. So one is the Meister ring that you could potentially craft with accessory crafting, but the materials for that are pretty rare. So that's typically not something that comes up at that stage for your first character. But if you have the materials saved up, you can essentially craft them on another character. So it's almost like a transferable ring. So if your account gets enough kind of treasure rings, then you don't need to really dip into the Meister rings, and you can keep the materials, and then you can save them for a character that gets unlucky there and needs a little bit of extra push, essentially. And then the other rings are all that would replace are all from Gollux. So you've got the reinforced and the superior Gollux rings, and then you can kind of see it in the boss content, right? So now you're at the Gollux is a little bit shitty in here because it's just shown once and it just shows the shitty items. So you kind of have to go to Gollux and fight the other difficulties. That's why I split them up in the dailies as well, because in the beginning I just had Gollux and then the difficulties in the same line, but now I added different lines for them because they are just so different. And then further rings, you get to the slime ring. So from the Guardian Angel Slime, which that'll be a boss that you will get to after normal Damien, but before hard Damien. So that will hopefully be one that you see. But typically the drop rate for if a boss has two difficulties that drop the same item, typically the drop rate on the lower level difficulty is just garbage. Like basically not something you want to count on. Like if you get one, that's great, but you can't really count on it. And then the higher level one typically has a way better drop rate. We have Gloom, doesn't even have drop rate for a lower one, has the Endless Terror, but now we're going into the area of like really, really rare rings. I haven't even seen one of these on my account yet, for example. So, I'm still waiting. But you have these ring boxes. They start dropping at Akechi. Yeah, at Akechi, and then basically all of the other bosses that are harder than that. Yeah, Papulatus is the one exception here, got kind of like left out, but everyone else here has these ring boxes, and these have like really special rings that have 3-minute cooldowns that typically don't have much stat on them, but they have a really strong effects, and then during that effect, if you combine it with your damage, they would be really useful. So for the Demon Avenger, what you'll want is the continuous ring. Again, this is like quite a lot further away from you, but this will increase your damage by a lot. The continuous ring is basically the solution to the more... Remember what we talked way in the beginning, where characters were more burst heavy or did more damage over time, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of rings that were really, really good that were very burst heavy. So there's like the weapon jump ring, which, if I wear that and I activate that, my HP now is 1.4 mil. And if I activate it now, my HP just goes up to 1.8 mil. And then it does like the same thing to other classes, where it just adds like an insane amount of stat for like, depending on the length of the ring, like up to 12 seconds or up to 15 seconds if you get an upgrade. Or the Ring of Restraint, for example, which like my total attack now is 5,751. If I activate it and send it, it goes up to 8,000. Like this upgrade is just, but it only lasts for 15 seconds and has a 3-minute cooldown. But the upgrade, or this one is only 12 seconds, is just so insane. So if you're very burst heavy, you synchronize that with these rings, it's just insanely good. But this left DPM classes a little bit behind, so that's why they got the continuous ring. Continuous ring sadly needs to charge for 2 minutes before it does anything, but then it procs passively as you just hit bosses. And as you hit a boss, you'll gain, I think it's 100 for tier 4, it's I think 140%. Yeah, 140% boss damage and 10% weapon attack for 8 seconds, and then 4 seconds off, 8 seconds on, 4 seconds off, 8 seconds on. So that helps a lot with extending that more gradual damage over time. So yeah, this makes a huge difference for DPM classes, specifically DA. DA is probably one of the most, maybe number 2 or 3 in the game, of like specifically DPM overtime characters versus burst. Yeah, completely other end of the spectrum, essentially.
Okay, and then what around what level in the game will you get the continuous ring, or like is it really rare?
Yeah, so the ring boxes, you could check like exclamation mark. Is it ring boxes? They all have like different tiers that they can access, and different odds. So if you get really lucky, you could hit something like a continuous ring 3 from a green box, but there's only 0.23% chance. But if you hit this early, you basically don't have to worry about that 4th slot for a ring, like, ever. Because that ring is just going to be probably better than even like a 22-star and 30% HP ring that you could wear.
Okay.
Because it just
like
outskills it so massively. So, but more realistically, you'll start looking at it once you get the black boxes. So you can look at which bosses have the black boxes, which is, I think, hard. Is it Vihil? No. Yeah, so basically once you get to Chaos Slime and Chaos Gloom, that's when you start getting pretty good odds for those. And then you can look at dailies, weeklies, and you can look at Chaos Slime and Chaos Gloom. And you can see that's mostly like around level 260 plus, because you basically just want the damage from the origin skill to make those bosses more manageable and the survivability from it.
Okay.
And that's how it's all interconnected, you know? Like, as long as you have the commands and you have the info. In the beginning, you'll be running around a little bit and, you know, checking the things. But after a while, you'll know exactly where everything is, and it'll just make total sense.
Okay. All right. And so I plan on leveling most classes, but what links are more important for a Demon Avenger?
So I do. There's two things in there. There's definitely one thing where you want to min-max what your Demon Avenger likes, and there's another one where you want to build synergy in your account first, so that you can build the snowball like more tightly, so that what ends up rolling down the hill isn't just like a puff of snow, but is an actual like solid ball. So I like building that foundation. So basically just starting here from the top and just working your way down. If you've got your critical rate foundation solid, it'll help any character that has possibly low critical rate, which Demon Avenger is one of, so it happens to coincide quite nicely. Because critical damage is one of the biggest forms of damage, and if you don't have your critical rate at 100%, not every hit is a critical damage, and you're missing out on a lot of damage. If ever, you'll notice this once you get to 100% critical rate, and then one time you like forget to put on your links or something, and you just look at how much longer it takes to kill something. It's a huge difference. So if you build this general order, you cannot go wrong with. You might not necessarily min-max in the short term for your main character, but in the long term, you will min-max for the value that your Legion brings. And remember, in the beginning, we also talked about like the synergy with the raid power and then with the coins, right? That is a value that's really hard to like quantify versus how much physical damage % are you getting out of it. You could look at like, okay, 10% critical rate takes me from 90 to 100% crit, and I have this much critical damage, so my final damage goes up by like, I don't know, by like 15% or something. That's a number you can put on it, but it's like, you know, 50% extra drop rate from coupons that I can now afford. Give me 2 more backups that can give me the chance to try to Starforce past 17, where there's a chance to boom and I can actually make it to 21. And now with that extra damage, I can kill a boss that I couldn't before, and I can get a drop from that. Like, yeah, it's impossible to like quantify like this is how impactful it is to your game. So I think just building a solid foundation for the Legion, and again, like, I would make them in this order if you can, and again, just, you know, put them in a box. Like, I hate this character, put him in that box. But do be aware, as you get a different job unlocked, a character can change a lot. Like, it can become way more fun, or it can also just stay really boring. You know, so keep your mind open with that. Especially if you hit 5th job. You know, some characters just become a completely different class at 5th job. But in the beginning, anything that hits 5th job is probably just hitting 5th job because you like the level 3 link, or because you like the double S Legion buff, right? So you might not play it as much. But if you get to 200, you unlock the 5th job, and you actually really like it. Now, maybe with a little bit of event EXP, a little bit of symbol dailies here and there, a little bit of money, a little bit of nodes, now it can become a boss, and you'll now can start making money for your account, and now can start taking a little bit of pressure off of your main character in terms of how much money it needs to bring in.
Okay, yeah, I got I level like my bossing mule, I guess, which is like the fire poison mage. I just got it to 200, so other than that, I plan on like getting the Mercedes and the Evan and the Aaron up to that level with the strawberry event.
Yep.
So I guess like after that, I should just go down the list pretty much.
Yeah, if you're ever just wondering what to make, if you go down the list, you can never really go wrong. If there's a class that kind of stands out, or you see someone playing something else, you're like, that looks really interesting, then by all means go for it. Because like 1 or 2 characters out of order are not going to break the bank. But if you're ever wondering, like, I just don't know what would help my account, just look here. And also this has a lot of different values. So this has the value of like, that's the order you can make the characters in. It also has the order of like, this is the order in which you want to make sure that your stats are like taken care of, you know? So if you're looking at like, I don't know how to build my hyper stats, or I don't know necessarily how to build my legion grid once it gets bigger and you get access to the bigger stats, well, these stats exist here as well. And this is general order you want to look at your stats in. Now, if they're maxed, or better yet, if they reach the numbers that the progression says you roughly want to have these numbers, then you know you're set, and then you can move on to the next one. And this is also how you can kind of start understanding the fundamentals of where does your damage come from your character, right? Like, how does your IED compare to your critical rate? It's really difficult to compare them 1-to-1, but you can compare them both to how much damage do they bring for you, and then you can compare them apples to apples. So there's, I think for that, the hyperstat video that I have is I think really good to lay that foundation of like, at what priority do you look at your stats, and to which extent is that connected to like where your damage comes from. We can look at hyperstats for a little bit though, because I did see that you have what I would say a little bit of inefficiency there. What happens most of the time is that you start off with your character and you just kind of like pile it on as you level. But like I said in the beginning, like as you get to the point where the bosses become more challenging and the mobbing also becomes more challenging, you want to more specifically make separate presets that are heavily beneficial for the situation of what you're going to be doing. And then you just want to swap between them if you're going to switch functionality. So if I look at this hyperset, the first thing I see is that the HP percent is really high, which makes sense early on. You don't have that much HP percent. But because HP percent does tend to roll more easily and has more sources, the relative value of HP percent tends to go down a little bit faster than other things. And the individual value of like a few percentage HP in the hyperstat loses out pretty quickly to other stats. Now, one of the things that I did talk about, right, is critical damage is a really big source of your damage. Any kind of critical damage that you could add, because your base critical damage is very low, you won't get full efficiency from it now because your critical rate isn't there yet, but with the building of the Legion, the critical rate will catch up very easily because you have the inner ability that's really nice. Which means that you will add a lot of value to your critical damage really quickly. And you have critical damage as well in hyperstats. And as the hyperstats in general, this is always going to be more valuable, both for mobbing and for bossing, than HP because of the total access that you have to critical damage. So for my character, my critical damage is at 84%, which basically means like the base critical damage is around 35 because it's 20 to 50. It has a range, so I usually take the average of 35, which means that if you hit a crit, you hit 135% of your damage. So 35% final damage extra. So you have 8%, so that means if you hit a crit, you hit, on average, you hit 143% of your total damage. But now if you get your critical damage stat in your hyperstat up, to, I should have it here, right? I have a level 11 here. That gives you 11%. So instead of doing 143% of your damage, you could do 154% of your damage. So 11% on the 143 is like, what is it, 1/8 or something? No, way less. 1/13th, which is about 8%. But 8% of your total damage that you're dealing. Okay. Whereas that 12% HP, if you look at what is that percentage HP compared to the total percentage HP you have, that's probably less than 1/13th, right? And that's how you can start comparing them more 1-to-1. But yeah, early on it's not as intuitive. So it makes sense. You see, like, I scale off of HP, I have HP, but there's just a lot of calculations that happen behind the scenes. There's a lot of info missing here, right? Like you can't really divine all of that and know all of that by looking at the stat window. So in Korea, they have also changed the stat window substantially. Like you don't really recognize it, and you will get this other stat that's called, I believe it's called combat power, which tries to do and does a better job. It's still, it can't encompass everything, so it's really difficult to look at, but it tries to encompass better how strong you actually are and how much damage you're actually doing. So that's one thing. And the other thing that it allows you to do is also click on other people and see all of their equips and all of the stats on it and like how well everything is upgraded. So you can kind of have a better idea on like what are other people wearing and how are they upgrading it, and are they just flexing stuff that's actually just something else, disguised as another item to make it look like they're all decked out, but they're actually posers. You can also expose people like that. But that will give you also a little bit better idea on like, what is that item even? Like, what does it even do? What would I even want it,
Okay. That's perfect. All right. So I just pretty much just got 2 more questions, and this is based off what like other people told me about the Demon Avenger.
Sure.
First one is my legendary ability. They said the attack speed one is better than the chance to skip cooldowns.
Yeah, so things are Korea has different attack speed. So they cap out at level 8 that you can see here, attack speed in the window. And then we have certain sources, but specifically the green pot, which allows us to go to 9 and even to 10. So that extra 2 levels of attack speed technically does not add that many more attacks per minute, but it speeds everything up just a little bit, that it allows you to get out of the way when you're bossing. So you can like dodge better and you can react faster and you're just not caught in animations as long. And yeah, people have crunched those numbers, and attack speed +1 is technically just more damage on bossing, because that's where we look for min-maxing the most on the top line. So what I have is like it's pretty close to what I have, what you have, but I have like the full best in slot with like the highest level numbers, at least like from what everyone agrees to, which is attack speed and then critical rate and then 10% chance to skip cooldowns.
Okay.
The chance to skip cooldown is definitely not bad, because you can get a lot of nether shields, they can fly around, they can give you a lot of lifesteal when you're bossing, and they can give you a lot of map clear when you're mobbing. And the extra 1 rank of attack speed, again, you're going from 9 to 10, right? If you're usually on a green pot, it's just that 1 extra rank. It won't be a huge difference, but you'll feel it once you get kind of like into the cadence of how fast it makes your character and how long it makes your animations. It will be really hard to go back, because what happens a lot is like when you jump attack, for example, the animation will, a lot of times the animation will just be done when you land, so you can immediately move, or it will just not be done, on 1 rank attack speed less, and you'll land and you'll be stuck for a little bit and then you can move. And it's just it's like a different experience. So once you get used to it, it's really hard to go back. So it's not the be all end all of damage making, but eventually you want to get to it. But the main thing for now would just be to save all your honor EXP and just stack it up. Because like I mentioned before, like in Korea, they have already started working with, and this summer we'll most likely get presets also for the inner ability. So that'll unlock... we'll get a lot of meta changes. And also there's another system called the Legion artifact system, which will be connected as well to Legion. So as you're building up your Legion, you're already pre-building up value for that as well. And that system is going to take over part of our final damage in the heroic passive that you have in your beginner tab. So there you see like how much final damage you get based on your level. Part of that is going to get taken away, and part of that is going to get replaced by a bunch of different stats in the Legion artifact system. And that is going to give a bunch of other stats that, again, combined, if you combine it to how much it increases your damage, will roughly give the same amount of final damage, but in a different way, not just like a flat amount and then just everything goes up. And part of that is also a lot of critical rate. So a lot of the inner abilities, what is like the advice and what is the min-maxing and the best in slot, is probably going to be shifting quite a bit. And so it's a good idea now in general for everyone with inner ability to just hold honor EXP and just wait for those systems to come out and let us kind of reevaluate like what do we do and what is slightly better, because there's a lot of weird options and ability that you don't have anywhere else. So it can be pretty hard to calculate how much does this really affect your damage over something else. Yeah.
Okay, so pretty much that's gonna make it harder early game, but better for late game with the changes on the Legion artifact. And
well, if you already have your Legion built, then you could just immediately start cashing in, and it'll roughly be around the same damage. For some classes, it'll be a slight decrease. For some, it'll be a slight increase. But for everyone, it's going to be like, you might have to redo your hyper stats a bit. You might have to redo your inner ability. You might have to, right? Because we've just been locked in on optimizing that for so long that now this big of an extra wave of all these different stats can kind of upset the balance of where do all the numbers come from. So if you're already if you're pretty far, you also typically already have the resources built up as well to be able to handle something like that. So, but for the newer players, you're just going to grow with that from the beginning, and it'll be beneficial because, like I said before, like you can make one that's purely focused on damage, and then you can make one that's focused on meso and drop rate, and then especially for classes that don't really heavily rely on their prime line. So like some people rely very heavily on the attack speed. DA not as much, but some other classes do, and some classes rely very heavily on buff skill duration. The classes that don't, they can freely go into like drop and meso, but with the changes, they will also be able to do that, but they'll just have to make a second inner ability. So it'll give much more flexibility to the situation that you're in, mobbing versus bossing.
Okay, and then I just had one final question, which someone told me about the potion pot from the cash shop that DAs need. Is that something that we actually need, or?
So I have personally never used it on my DA. I bought one and used one for an achievement that I ended up doing on my Mihail because there was like certain content that's really, really difficult, and you can't heal there, but somehow you can use a potion pot, which is just the same as healing. So it was very easy to do with that. Yeah, in Ghost Park. But I have never used it on the DA. So the thing with potion pot essentially is that you just throw a whole bunch of potions in there, and then if you need a certain amount of healing, it'll just take as many potions out of the potion pot that would require you to get that healing. And the thing with Demon Avenger is that during Frenzy, we can only heal for up to like 1% of our max HP, right?
Yeah.
I'll be interested. I maybe need to look up more about this and look into it more, but I have never used it myself ever on the DA.
Okay.
And I feel like all of my failures were attributable to myself and not to lack of potion pot, I don't think. But yeah, maybe that's something I need to just look into as well. Maybe there's been some developments on that. This game is just so vast, and there's so many small things like that there could be like one or two bosses where actually potion pot is just hugely beneficial and makes the boss so much easier. And that I have just somehow been able to overlook that for the last 8 years. That is very possible. Because there's so many small things and so many classes. There's 49 classes now. So, every class has got like its own few tips and tricks, and yeah.
Yeah, they're saying like towards end game, potion pot is like real beneficial. So that's why I wanted to figure that out.
Okay.
I know I won't really need it now, but I just wanted to know about it.
Yeah, it is something that I think when you buy it, it does activate for a while, and then you have to keep rebuying it and everything. It's not super expensive, but you'd have to like keep it up. It's probably one of those things though, where when you get used to it, you're gonna notice it when it's gone quite a bit. But honestly, I'll add that to my list of things to look at. Specifically, I don't know where you heard about it, but you could also check in the class Discord for the Demon Avengers. Right?
Yeah,
Just like,
it was the class Discord is what I heard about it.
Did they say anything specifically with it? Just
they
that
just
it's
said
been...
the pay to win method for DAs is potion pot, and that like it changes the whole game for Demon Avengers.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would have to think about. You'd wanna the further you go, and the more risk you're willing to take, right? To get your HP lower, get more final damage from it. And as you know the boss fights better, you can just risk more and get more for it back. But with potion pot, if you're healing yourself, then you're cutting into your HP. So I'd have to think a little bit about like which situations where. I imagine that it helps you always get back up to like 30% HP, right? Because when you're below 30% HP, your frenzy stops working properly, and then you just kind of like heal like normal if you're under 30% until you hit that 30% mark again.
Yeah.
So maybe they're talking about, you know, being able to at least in one go heal yourself from sub 30% to 30%, without needing to exit frenzy and then go back into it, because activating frenzy itself also costs a lot of HP, and then you're just constantly ping-ponging your HP back and forth without really getting anywhere. So that might be what they're talking about with that. Yeah, honestly, it's something that you've mentioned now that I would have to look into. I'm still learning about this game every day as well. There's just so much in here, but yeah, maybe next week or something you could we can reconvene, and then I can send you a message of what I found, and you can send me what you found, and then maybe you can have a conclusion on that.
All right, perfect. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I'll look
really
into
appreciate that. I have so much more to learn.
I
have like a roadmap of what I want to do, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, if you ever want to do something together, or you ever have any questions, you could just hit me up on Discord, or I stream every day, so I do this full time, so you can always jump into the Twitch chat or something and just fire away.
All right, perfect. Thank you again, Ming and Sethy Boy as well.
Yeah, they've been in and around the community for a long time. Very good people. I mean, they've got their own lives going on, so they're not as active every time as they could be like in game itself. But they're good people for sure.
All right, and thank you so much again, and I'm a grind away again.
All right, yeah. Well, enjoy the grind. Hopefully, you can find the things that you enjoy and keep holding on to those. And wish you the best of luck on your journey with content and just enjoying the game overall. It's a vast game, so there's plenty to like, and just good luck on it, and I'll see you around.
All right, man. I'll see you later.
All right, bye. Boom! Right within an hour and a half. Oh my god, I'm just so good with time and time management. I'm just a gauge. All right. Yeah, you could talk for like 4 hours about like what to get the potentials on. I guess we didn't get into the details, but like the weapon, secondary, and emblem, that's where a lot of the damage comes from. So hopefully these things see unique first and see legendary first. Well, they won't see legendary first because this ring. These will bring a lot more damage to your account than the HP can, just because of the limited access you have to percentage attack versus the more abundant access you have to things like percentage HP. But these potentials are like really good for like a level 220, a little bit of flames on the boss accessory stuff, getting the real CRA pieces. That's where he's getting at now, right? Like, is the real CRA stuff. Gloves are really nice. You'll be able to transfer hammer this up to 150 and then up to 160 into Absolab. That'll be really nice. The V Matrix is, of course, bare bones early start, but that's look like coming along nicely. Oh yeah, I want to get the decent speed infusion in there, which he has. Slam it in there, bro. Slam decent speed infusion in there and decent hyper body as well. Your decent skills are very good at the beginning. Critical rating, critical damage, extra rank of attack speed, bunch of HP. Demon Avengers love decent skills. Link skills, we talked about that. Legion, block, yeah. Alright, so yeah, hopefully someone who's like newish, if you're playing in Hyperion, you're playing in Chronos, you're playing in any of the heroic worlds, you're playing in Solus, all of this applies for you. But of course, yeah, there might be some additional questions you have based on things that you saw, things that you heard that we talked about. You should leave a comment if there's anything you're wondering about, or use the commands in my chat. Thank you very much, Crucial, for the gifted subs. I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you again. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. But yeah, use the commands in the chat. Those are available for everyone. All of these that you saw that we used, they're all... I try to keep them all up to date as much as possible. As you can imagine, a lot of things change in this game, so I can miss a thing here or there. If you have a question or you think something's wrong, let me know. I'll dive into it, and if you're right, we'll adjust it. And if you're wrong, then I'll do my best to explain why. the understanding might exist, and I might still change it a little bit to make sure that the confusion doesn't happen in the future, you know? If you want one of these sessions, make sure you check the description of the video or use !coaching in the Twitch chat. And if you want to win one of these free sessions, make sure you leave a comment saying that you thought it was the best thing you've ever seen on YouTube. And no, just make sure you mention that you are wanting to win a session, and please include your Discord name so I can reach out to you. And I pick 2 winners at the end of every month, and those people just get a free session with me. So if you would like to win one of those, make sure you leave a comment. That all being said, hopefully you enjoyed. Hope you learned a thing or two. If you didn't, check out one of the other videos, and then maybe you can learn a thing or two there. And I'll see you either in the next video, thank you for watching, or live on stream, twitch.tv/Scardor. I stream there every day, so feel free to hang out and come by. Thanks for checking it out. Bye.